Welcome back to the Sovereign Renaissance, a channel where we discuss all things multidimensional. Now, in this video, we're going to be discussing, or rather, having a look at the radical purging of the false self. The mirror didn't crack. The reflection simply stopped mimicking me. As I stared, the stranger behind the glass, the confident, curated version of myself I'd spent decades perfecting, slowly peeled away like wet parchment, revealing a raw, shrieking void beneath. I realized then that I hadn't been living a life. I had been a host for a ghost of my own making, and the exorcism was just the beginning, one agonizing layer at a time. The concept of viewing ego death or narcissistic injury as an exorcism is a powerful psychological metaphor. It reframes a period of intense personal suffering not as a mere breakdown, but as a radical purging of the false self. In this framework, the demon being exorcised is not an external spirit, but the ego construct, the rigid, defensive, and often grandiose identity you have built to protect yourself from original, deeper wounds. The possession of the persona. Now, in Jungian terms, we often become possessed by our own personas. When you identify too closely with the mask you wear, the I am successful, or I am vulnerable, or I am perfect version of yourself, you are effectively living in a state of psychic possession. This ego construct is fueled by external validation or narcissistic supply. Because it is fragile, it requires constant maintenance. When you suffer a narcissistic injury, a failure, a public embarrassment, or rejection, that facade cracks. For someone heavily identified with the ego, this feels like an existential threat. The exorcism is a collapse of this very false identity. The exorcism as psychic death. The reason this functions as an exorcism is that it forces the spirits of your own repressed shadows into the light. The purge. During an ego death, the defense mechanisms that usually keep your deepest insecurities and truths at bay are stripped away. You are forced to confront the reality that lies beneath that grandiosity. The disorientation. Much like the terror associated with traditional exorcism accounts, the loss of ego is terrifying because the self you thought you were is literally dying. You are losing your primary frame of reference of who you are. The reclamation process. Once the false, brittle structure of the ego is removed, the energy that was previously used to maintain that castle of mirrors is released. In the aftermath, you are no longer driven by the frantic need to defend a hollow image. Why it is radical. Now, most forms of personal growth are addictive. You learn new habits, gain new skills, or adopt new beliefs. This exorcism is subtractive. It is the most radical form of change because it doesn't give you something new. It takes away the parts of you that were never truly yours to begin with. From grandiosity to humility, the collapse of the ego forces a move from a state of I am better than grandiosity to I am a part of humility, shadow integration. You stop projecting your insecurity onto others. The demon or the split off, rejected part of yourself is finally welcomed and integrated back into the totality of your personality. The risk and the potential. It is important to note that this exorcism is inherently dangerous. Without support, the void left by a collapsing ego can lead to severe depression, dissociation, or a desperate, harmful attempt to rebuild the exact same false self or repossession. However, if navigated with self reflection and courage, the aftermath of this collapse is often the beginning of an authentic life. You stop acting in order to be perceived in a certain way and start acting from a place of genuine values. You are no longer haunted by the phantom of your own potential or the fear of being seen for who you really are because you have finally met yourself in the dark. When you consider this idea of exorcism, do you feel that your current path is more about strengthening the structures you've built? Or are you in a session where you feel those structures are being tested or dismantled? A reflection for you. The silence in the room was absolute, yet for the first time, it didn't feel empty. It felt occupied by something terrifyingly real. My hands, once controlled by the puppet strings of a hollow persona, were finally my own, trembling as I reached out to touch the cold, exposed truth of who I had become in the dark. I looked into the mirror, expecting to see a savior or a monster. Instead, I found nothing at all. And in that final hollow clarity, I realized that the thing I had been running from for my entire life wasn't the demon I'd been fighting, but the terrifying, unrecognizable shape of the person left behind when lying stopped. And if you liked this episode, please do like, share, and subscribe. And thank you to everyone that actually does like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And until next time, goodbye.